everybody, this is CCG Productions here. Today is Friday, January 23rd, 2026, and we have probably an ice storm on the way. So I don't think it's going to happen, but should the lights go out unexpectedly in the middle of recording this video, we will all know about it readily, because I've got two uninterruptible power supplies here in this tech room that will let me know immediately should the lights go out. Also, the air conditioning is running right now, so yeah, I'll hear the UPS is cut over to battery power, I'll hear the freezer shut down, and I'll hear the blower motor and the air handler immediately spin down. So anyways, not even 45 seconds into the video and we've already gotten a digression. Anyways, today we are going to be taking a look at and possibly even testing a trash-picked computer. Yes, the computer we are going to be working with in this video was trash-picked out of a dumpster. And basically, I saw this computer, well, I walked to the end of the hallway in a building I work in, and I noticed that in the dumpster position outside of the building, I spotted both side panels for the computer case tossed on top of a pile of trash in the dumpster, and I was like, okay, I recognize the size of that case. And so I decided to go ahead and just walk down the stairs out the back door and start looking around. Found the size of the case immediately and started looking around from the computer. Didn't find the computer for a couple moments until I decided to take a walk around the dumpster, and I found the computer just stuck there in the dumpster with both sides of the case taken off for some reason or another. And I suspect that one of the residents in the neighborhoods behind that building probably threw it away in there, along with several other things, not the least of which was a pretty large GE microwave. But I don't mess with microwaves that have been thrown away in dumpsters because those tend to attract bugs practically immediately, whereas the computers, the bugs usually stay away from because there's far more attractive things for those bugs in the dumpster, not the least of which was a GE microwave that someone had no doubt cooked all kinds of food in. So the microwave stayed behind, but I definitely got the computer. And it was a good thing I got the computer when I did too, because I think either the next day or the day after that, the dumpster had been emptied. So probably had I not spotted it then and there, the computer would have gone to the dumpster. And the computer is a complete machine. The system is complete. Yeah, system is complete. Has RAM, CPU, one or two expansion, just a single expansion card, a wireless card. Still has a hard drive, so is the optical drive. Yeah, still is the optical drive, and I can probably tell you who built the thing going by the quality of the build in the computer case. And going by that quality, the computer case, the power supply that normally ships with this particular computer case was never very good to begin with. And in the two computer cases that I have worked with, the two or three that I've worked with so far, one of them, the power supply got tossed immediately. The second one, it had its stock power supply running for a little bit until I replaced it, and the user of that particular system complained that the system was always a little bit unstable with the power supply installed that came installed from the factory with that particular computer case. And I don't know about the third example of that power supply, but it was no wonder of quality either. It wasn't exactly good quality, but at the same time, if you took it out of the case, it wouldn't get sucked up into the ceiling fan. The other two, and the one we're about to look at, let's just put it this way, I could probably blow on it hard enough and move the thing across the table and probably even push it onto the floor with the wiring harness cut loose from it. It's that bad. So yeah, we are not going to be smoke testing that power supply. We're going to be installing literally anything else and then powering the computer up if we manage to make it that far in this video. So We're 5 minutes into the video just about. Let's get this show on the road. So, here we have the computer. This pretty much unassuming looking thing. Now, I can tell you with pretty good confidence who built this thing. And I can tell you with pretty good confidence the outfit that built this thing, and they are not a very reputable outfit. I mean, sure, they might have an official business name and a website and one or two storefronts. However, I think one of those storefronts has closed in the past few years. And the quality of work that they do is not very good. I have got stories to tell about them, and I think I have told at least one or two of those stories in my 7 years of TCG Productions video, and I may have recounted some of those stories again in various other videos, but I can't bring them to mind at the moment because it's approaching almost 11 o'clock at night here in the Central Standard Time Zone. But hallmarks is we've got this pretty generic case that they bought like 1,000,003 of. It seemed to be their standard pick option for whenever a customer wanted an computer. We have an Asus optical drive, which the grease has no doubt hardened up on, and so the tray will not open without manual intervention, and by that I mean the paper clip. By that I mean a friendly paper clip jammed into the emergency ejection hole right there. I have no idea whether or not we have a free disc. And I still don't know whether or not we have a free disc in the Packard Bell system, because I haven't actually attempted to open that thing's optical drive up. So, and then we spin this thing around, have a look at the back there. We have a Windows 7 Home Premium product key. So Windows 7 is long out of support. There's the back end of that power supply. And if you've seen these cases, you automatically recognize this power supply if you've been unfortunate enough to see one of these cases with the factory installed power supply still present. We have a gigabyte motherboard in here, and then below that we have a single wireless card that actually has a wireless protected setup button that cannot be seen. There we go. Yeah, it has a little wireless protected setup button. So you press that, you press a corresponding button on your wireless router, and apparently that's supposed to allow you to get this thing onto a wireless network without actually having to know your Wi-Fi password. Unfortunately, that misfeature is totally insecure these days and really shouldn't be used for absolutely anything at all ever. And I actually recommend disabling it on your wireless router if you have not already done so. So anyways, the size of the case are just as generic and unassuming as they were 30 seconds ago. So anyways, let's go ahead and pop the side cover off. And yeah, it is. Oh wow, this thing is light. Almost just tipped the thing over merely by grabbing a hold of it. And we can see Arc Technology Incorporated ATX P4 power supply. This will be the third one of these things that I have had the unfortunate misadventure of seeing, and I think I actually had one of these things blow up on me about 11 or 12 years ago. I had one of these power supplies blow up on me about 11 or 12 years ago, I think. Just messing around with it. It wasn't putting out any voltage, and it just randomly went pop. Let the magic smoke out and everything. So I cut the wiring harness off of it and threw the whole thing in the trash. So that is another big sign It's another calling card of the company of the particular outfit that built this thing. Another calling card of the particular outfit that built this pile of pre-manufactured computer grief is the fact that they used a terribly cheap rear case fan that doesn't even have a 3-pin connector on it to hook it up to a motherboard's fan header. No, what they did is they just used one of these cheap piles of rubbish that only has a Molex power connector on it, and they attached it to a Molex connector on the power supply's wiring harness. And they then went so far as to zip tie the harness together. So, great job everybody, no notes. We have a Gigabyte motherboard. So, running an FM2 Plus socket. And then it's a GA-F2A78M-D3H. I think I have another system sitting in storage that has one of these identical motherboards in it. And wow, that's an even smaller heat sink than the one that's installed on the other system. So this may not be that motherboard. I don't know. It is running some ridiculously low-end AMD processor, AMD AP. It is running some ridiculously low-end AMD APU thing that it was cheap back in 2014, and it was cheap back in 2014, and it has probably aged terribly in the intervening 12 years it has been since this system was built. So another calling card is the fact that they used one of these terrible, horrible, no good, very bad Seagate desktop hard drives. That is a 1 terabyte hard drive, and it's a Seagate ST1000DM003 or something to that effect. I don't know. I don't particularly care. I'm half expecting the drive to be defective. So, and then yet another calling card of the outfit that built this thing. They only put 1 stick of RAM in, and they put it in the slot closest to the processor, and they have that type of label on it. I have seen that label on other memory modules that have been installed in systems that were built by that particular outfit. Can you tell that I don't like that particular outfit? I don't want to play the name and shame game. I mean, unless they have gone completely out of business, at which point, all bets are off. So, this is what we're working with. A low-end Gigabyte motherboard running a low-end AMD APU with a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad power supply, and the cheapest hard drive that money couldn't buy. And at some point, I don't know if this wireless card was something that was installed when the system was built, or if this is an aftermarket wireless card that someone installed after the fact because they wanted the computer that they probably paid way too much for to have basic functionality in 2014, and that is wireless. So I'm going to unscrew the antennas from the card for probably the first time since the card was installed or the system was built, whichever one happened last. Pull the card out along with a healthy heaping of dust and some spider webs. You can tell that no one's actually bothered to clean this thing. And we have a Realtek RTL 8192 CE wireless chipset. So, there's a dust bunny there that was blocking the PCIe X1 slot. So, anyways, you know, this system's been running for a while, and honestly, there's a couple different reasons why this system could have ended up in the dumpster. First one is that the hard drive failed. Second one is the power supply failed. Third one is end of support for Windows 10, at least on at least what Microsoft would like you to believe is the official end of support for Windows 10. Even though there are ways you can, shall we say, activate it such that you can continue getting support for Windows 10. So, yeah. So I have a small army of power. I have a small army of power supplies on my shelf over here that seem to only be multiplying as time goes on. So I have this little Corsair CX500M power supply that is about 10 years old. I've had the thing for about 10 years. And it's got the basic stuff we need to power up a computer. It has the 20 and 24 pin ATX connector. It has an 8-pin CPU power connector, and it has two. And then I've got two SATA cables hooked up to it because it's a semi-modular power supply. So it's a decent little testing power supply that I don't mind using and stuff like this. Unfortunately, getting the existing supply out of here is going to be rather cumbersome because the hard drive overhangs the motherboard power connector. Oh wow. Oh wow. They really were not trying hard with this system. The latch that is supposed to hold the 24-pin ATX connector into place, it's not even latched. Now it is. They weren't even trying. So, yeah. And then the hard drive is overhanging the connector such that I cannot actually unplug it without removing the hard drive from the system. So, unplug the SATA connector, and again, it's a latching connector. However, to be charitable, to be fair, that's probably whatever the motherboard shipped with. And then we have a non-latching. Good lord, that wiring is thin. I'm going to do a separate video. I'm going to do a separate video on the terribleness of this power supply because it really kind of does deserve its own video. Because that power supply is absolutely awful. And in fact, I think we might even let the fireworks out on it in that video. Because this power supply does not deserve to exist. So now we'll see whether or not the system builder... Okay, they did actually put in all 4 screws on both sides of the case, which means that I need to take the other side of the case off. No, your eyes do not deceive you. No, your eyes do not deceive you. There is no need to adjust your television set. This thing is packed full of dust bunnies. Because the system was built, and then the system probably ran for 6 ever and a million years. Okay, I stand corrected. They did not put in all 4 screws to secure the hard drive in place. They only put in 3. So, I'll back this screw out and see if it was possible for them to... Yeah, it would have been possible for them to put all 4 screws in place to hold the hard drive in. And I just dropped the screw. It would have been possible for them to put all 4 screws in place for them to hold the hard drive in, but I guess they just weren't trying hard enough. I don't know. Maybe it was a maybe it was a Friday in the technician building this thing Oh, good Lord Almighty. Anyways, here's our hard drive. Seagate ST1000DM003, so I nailed it right on the head. It's one of these little slimline desktop drives. Probably has a million bad sectors. But no, I guess the technician just didn't care enough. So now I should be able to hopefully unplug the 24-pin ATX connector. There we go. I guess I didn't need to remove the hard drive to get it out of there, but it was going to need to come out regardless, because I just had to wrench on the connector. Unplug the dinky little Molex fan connector thing. Unplug the optical drive. Unplug the CPU power connector. Here's another calling card. We have an 8-pin CPU power connector here, but they only hooked up this little 4-pin connector. Of course, it's the only one available on the power supply, so yeah, 8-pin CPU power connector, and they only hooked up a 4-pin connector because they didn't want to replace a power supply with a computer case, because they would have had to spend an extra $27. So, well, and unplug the power connector that goes to the cheerful little blue LED. I'm going to get the SATA cable for the optical drive out of the way. I'll reconnect it before we actually power this system up. And untangle this and that. And then 4 screws, power supply comes out. And do not be surprised if this thing just floats away or gets sucked into the ceiling fan and makes a god-awful racket and possibly even breaks a ceiling fan. Or does something equally annoying or entertaining, depending on who you are. Something I just realized. You want to know why they called it an ARC? You want to know why they call it ARC Technologies? Probably because it's from the same people that actually developed the original ARC Survival Evolved video game. And anybody who has known about that game or has played it. Okay, I am really not impressed with the quality of work I'm seeing here. But anybody that has played that game, or at least knows about it, knows that that game is practically itself a gigantic terrarium for bugs and other nasties. And this power supply is cheap and nasty. So, and as we can see, the power supply has been doing its best impression of a dust filter. Now, due to the white balance on the camera, that dust looks like it's yellowed with nicotine and cigarette tar, but it's not. The computer would be smelling really bad if that was the case, and there's little dust flurries going all over the place from this god-awful power supply. Look at this. Look at this. There are dust bunnies flying all over the tech room. Now, the power supply does not fail the smell test, but I don't imagine it would I would not be surprised if it failed a power test. I would not be surprised if I plugged it in and it promptly led directly to the scene of the fire, or maybe even the explosion. So now I'm going to put our new power supply into place. See how many of the screws will actually go in. because I have had this power supply in and out of quite a few systems, and so some of the screw holes are kind of wallowed out and the threads are gone. I mean, the threads are stripped out. Okay, got 2. Got 3. Okay. I'm actually kind of surprised by those results. All 4. Wow. Okay. Just gonna get those snug. One of them is sketchy, but I'm not surprised. So I think for our first test here, you know what? We're just gonna plug everything in. Hard drive included, hit the power button and see what happens. And hopefully this thing will not give me a reason to wipe the hard drive sooner than immediately. Or worse yet, have to turn it over to the local police department, because that would be bad and not good. So, wow, look at that motherboard flexure. So, then we're going to have a couple of SATA devices here. So I'm just going to take this other SATA cable and put it somewhere in the case. Then hook up the optical drive, and then we've got enough cable length here to hook up a hard drive. So I'll just kind of tack the hard drive into the system here. I have to angle it. Yeah, I have to angle it in and out because of the way this case is set up. So I'm just gonna kind of tack it in here with a couple screws. We are probably not going to have any Molex devices hooked up, so no rear case fan, no front panel power button, and well, maybe we might, if I can dig up my wiring adapter. Here we go. Yeah, so we'll have, we'll have one Molex device. We'll make it the rear case fan. So we'll hook up the hard drive, place the power to it. I'll plug in my wiring adapter here. As we can see, I can plug this in. I get a 4-pin bird connector for floppy diskette drives. I got a pair of SATA connectors, and I get a Molex connector. Really the only thing I need to complete this is a little Molex splitter. So I'll plug into that. And, well, it even gives me the extra Molex connector here, so I can just hook up the front panel power indicator. So, yeah, we are actually able to hook everything up in here. We're also able to tangle everything. We're also able to tangle everything up too. So, plug the SATA cable into the optical drive. Plug the SATA cable into the hard drive. And the system now weighs about twice as much. So, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get things set up here to get this thing plugged in and powered up, and we'll be right back. Okay, I've got the system hooked up. I've got the system set up and hooked up and everything like that. The only thing I have left to do is to hit the power switch on the back of the power supply, and if it doesn't do it for me, hit the power button and fire this thing up. So, alright, power supply is on. That switch has quite a click to it. Alright, here we go. And nobody's home. Okay, we're back a couple of days later, one winter storm later, and this gets even stranger because the last time we had the camera rolling, we definitely noticed the system absolutely would not... Why are you making noise, phone? We noticed that the system absolutely would not power up whatsoever, regardless of what I was doing to the power button. And the power button didn't do anything, the reset button didn't do anything, the motherboard was acting like it had a dead chipset. I think it's particularly a dead south bridge. Because if I remember correctly, the south bridge is what has all of the front panel I/O headers, and all of the front panel button headers and stuff like that on it. And the system was just completely comatose. Wouldn't respond to power, wouldn't respond to reset, no activity whatsoever, nobody was home. So, yeah. And I was afraid that the previous power supply had killed the motherboard. So, I double-checked the power supply that I put in, just in case it had gone bad somehow. And it had not gone bad. If I unplugged the 24-pin ATX header off the motherboard, and put my little test adapter on there, to short the PS on wire to ground to make the power supply come on. Power supply came on as soon as I turned on the AC line power to it. And then I checked all the voltages were good, 5 volt standby, 5 volt standby, 5, 3.3, 12, minus 12 volts, there's no minus 5 volt rail on the supply I don't think, because that rail hasn't been relevant since ISA went out of style. So, there's that, and then I decided to go ahead and take my power supply and plug it into the motherboard. Took the power supply, plugged it direct into the motherboard with a paper clip bridging PS on the ground to force the power supply to come on. And whenever I turned the power supply's AC line input on, the system the power came on to the system, but the motherboard was once again completely comatose. And so I tried the good old-fashioned method of just start unplugging devices and bring it down to a minimum configuration. So, unplugged the wireless card, no change. And that's about as far as I got before I decided to take the old power supply apart, at least take the cover off of it. And that's about as far as I got before I decided, you know what, I'm too tired to be working on this, I'm going to bed. So I went to bed. And then we had a winter storm blow in, particularly an ice storm. And so that kind of sidelined things for a day or two. And then yesterday morning we had a power outage. About 4:35 a.m. lights went out. And the lights stayed out for about 6 hours. So, and then once everything came back up and I was bringing all the UPSs back up, I fired up the UPS here in the tech room, which brought Hyperion up, my virtual machine hypervisor running Proxmox VE9. And yeah, I brought Hyperion up, and it ran fine for about 5 minutes before all network connectivity through it just died. I could get to everything on the LAN side of the house, but as far as the LAN side goes, it goes upstream, absolutely nothing. Bup gives. So basically what happened is the network controller, I've got a 2-port Intel Pro 1000 network controller installed in the machine, and that network controller died, completely died. And I noticed that the D-message logs were full of transmit queue timeout errors, as well as some warnings from the associated driver saying that the device had, for all intents and purposes, disappeared. So I power cycled Hyperion, brought it back up, and connectivity through that NIC was just every kind of broken that you could imagine. Massive packet loss, incredibly slow speeds, and yeah, the NIC was done. So I changed out the NIC, got the system back up and running, and today I've decided to go ahead and continue on with this video. So I wasn't exactly planning on recording this video right here, right now, at least this particular segment, but I decided to pop a memory module out of the machine and try again. And I noticed, yeah, I popped the memory module out of the machine, turned the power on to the power supply, and at first I got nothing. And then all of a sudden the system came up, and the motherboard started continuously beeping, indicating that it was very unhappy about something, probably the fact that it didn't have a memory module installed. But then I noticed that depending on what I was doing, it would either be on or it would be off. And I was like, okay. But the fact that I was getting error beeps out of the machine was good, because it means that something is alive on the motherboard. So I powered the machine down, installed the memory module, brought the system back up. We'll power the system back on, and it came up. I heard the single post beep, and I turned the power off right then and there. So, yeah, turn the power off right then and there, and yeah. So, then I noticed I still had my friendly little paperclip bridging PS on to ground, and so I tried removing it. Turned the system on, turned the AC line power on, nothing. Motherboard would not respond. So I turned the AC line power off, bridged PS on back to ground, plugged that back into the 24-pin ATX header on the motherboard, turned the system power on, and the system started coming up. Got my happy little post beep, and I turned the power off to the power supply right then and there. So, yeah, this thing, it's a bit of an oddball creature. And I would not be surprised if we were looking at damage that had been inflicted upon the motherboard by a cheap, no-name, crappy power supply. So, with all that being said and out of the way, let's go ahead, fire this thing up, and see what happens. One thing I am going to do is I am going to unplug the SATA cable to the hard drive, so that way this thing does not attempt to boot off of anything that might be contained on that hard drive. And that should force us into system setup, so that way we can have a look around. Anyways, 3, 2, 1, smoke test. Oh, there we go. We have post. BIOS has been reset. Please decide how to continue. Yeah, another thing I did is I popped the CR2032 battery off the motherboard. I really need a set of blackout curtains for this tech room or something. Because right now the ground is covered with ice that looks deceptively like snow, so the roads are extremely hazardous. And college I-10 has actually decided to go ahead and cancel classes for tomorrow. So, okay, so let's do a couple of things here. Going to set the white balance to, let me see, outdoor, and then set the exposure and then set the focus. Okay, BIOS has been reset. Please decide how to continue. I have no USB controllers. USB is totally absent. Yeah, mouse isn't working, keyboard is not working, so I'm probably going to have to do something that I don't particularly like doing, and that is hot plug a PS2 keyboard. So, let me find my PS2 keyboard adapter here. Well, just PS2 keyboard and hot plug. Of course, it could also be that not all of the USB ports are initialized at the moment, and so maybe I should try plugging my USB devices into the USB ports located next to the PS2 port on the system. I still don't have any USB devices. So, yeah, hot plug a PS2 keyboard it is then. I know you're generally not supposed to do something like this, but this motherboard is obviously not. This motherboard is obviously damaged. And I still don't have anything. I'm going to reset. And hit the reset button. Okay, I still don't have a mouse, however I do have a keyboard now. Enter BIOS. So, yeah, I have no mouse. My mouse is absolutely not responding. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and set the date and time to something plausible. It is January 26, 2026. And the time is 12:30. I don't care about the seconds. Okay, numlock is on. Fast boot disabled. Windows 8 features is set to other OS, so we're probably running Windows 7, or maybe the system's been upgraded to Windows 8, 8.1, or 10. Yeah, it says on-chip USB controller is enabled, however, and legacy USB support is enabled. However, we have absolutely no USB devices on the system. So, yeah, we very well may have a damaged motherboard. We very well may have a damaged motherboard here. Now, the parallel port isn't going to matter much. And the parallel port's not going to matter much, because I don't think we have one available on this system. Just gonna go ahead and save and exit setup, see what this thing does. That was not good looking. Yeah, something's wrong. Okay, reboot and select proper boot device, or insert boot media and select a boot device and press a key. And that's because it can't find anything to boot from. Oh, that's right, I still have the jumper across the PS on wire. I don't like how that is getting... I don't like how that's showing graphical corruption anytime it tries to change video modes. I don't know if that's my monitor doing that or if that's the computer itself. So anyways, I just plugged in the SATA cable to the hard drive. So we're going to go ahead and power up here. Okay, we have our friendly little post beep, no signal. That's normal for some of these gigabyte boards. I've got another one that does that exact same thing. Okay, we're obviously running at least Windows 8. Yeah, we're running 8, 8.1, or 10, and we're booting in UEFI boot mode. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a functioning mouse when this thing comes up. No, my mouse is being completely ignored. Either that or it's just not ready for mouse input yet. We do have a PS2 keyboard though. Okay, we don't have a mouse. We do not have a mouse. That or Windows is trying to figure out drivers for the thing. says it's 11:34 a.m., which is totally incorrect, so I see what looks like a Windows 7 background, so probably an upgrade from 7 to 10. But my mouse is being completely ignored, so either we just don't have USB ports on this system, or maybe, who knows? Yeah, or maybe Windows is trying to figure out mouse drivers or something. I have no idea who that person is. But it looks like I'm going to need to use a copy of Hiron's PE or something like that to get around that. So I'm going to shut the system down. At least I'm going to perform a software shutdown. Okay, hard disk activity indicator has gone out. Or maybe not. Okay, there it goes. Hard drive just spun down. So now I'm going to unplug the SATA cable of the hard drive and plug in the network cable. So that way I can PXE boot this thing. And I'm just going to make the blind general assumption that the PXE boot ROM is already on the boot list. And maybe that's the last we'll ever hear from this system, because it is not posting now. Maybe plugging in the network controller killed this thing dead. Yeah, I mean there's a number of things that could have taken this system out, because turn the power supply off and see what happens. Turn the power supply back on. See what happens. And the system appears to be completely comatose now. Maybe plugging in the network cable finally did this thing in. Turn this thing off. Unplug the network cable. Just look at my network switch to see, make sure it hasn't let the magic smoke out of it. Okay, we'll plug this thing in and power this thing up after unplugging the network cable. I guess that's it. Yeah, this motherboard is definitely not well. It's definitely been damaged by something unfortunate. Because now the system is completely comatose. Maybe that was the last time I'll ever hear anything from it. I don't know. Could wiggle the memory module around in its slot. That seemed to be the thing that did the trick last time. Could also just been complete happenstance. Yeah, it's comatose. There is nobody home. There I go, almost flinging my toolkits right off the back of the desk. Let's unseat the memory module and yeah. Try again. Yeah. Now I'm not even getting any error beeps out of the system. There's nobody home. There's nobody home. I'm not getting any error beeps or anything. She's dead, Jim. Well, I'm glad I had the camera rolling, because now it's dead to the world. There's nobody home. So, this is why you do not use. This is why you don't use cheap and cheerful little craptastic power supplies with your computers, because this is the eventual end result, a dead system. So, yeah, this is the eventual end result, is a completely dead computer that no longer functions. And this is probably why this thing ended up in the dumpster, because it did exactly this. It just randomly no-posted. And we know that the hard drive hasn't been wiped, so that will need to be done separately. Yeah, hard drive hasn't been wiped, we know that much. It's running an upgrade install of Windows 10, upgraded from Windows 7. And, yeah, I can tell you who built the thing, too. And I'll look to see if they're still in business. If they're not, their name's getting plastered up all over this video. So, yeah. Yeah, this is why you don't use cheap. This is why you don't use cheap and nasty power supplies with your computer. I bet you a quality power supply for this computer, like this little Corsair CX500. In fact, let's look at the label off of the original power supply. Yeah, 500 watts. Yeah, only reason. Yeah, 500 watts. Yeah, only time this thing would ever deliver 500 watts is whenever it explodes and fries your computer. So, yeah, I imagine. You know what? I'm gonna look at Amazon right now. Let's look at Amazon right now. And let's see what a decent 500 watt power supply will cost. And the answer is $40. For $40, you can buy a power supply that will not fry. You can buy an equivalent power supply that will not fry your computer in short order. And that's a Thermaltake Smart 500 watt power supply. This is not even semi-modular. Let's see. 30 bucks. 60 if you're willing to buy from a well-known brand. I haven't heard of that brand before. I'd want to see who actually OEMs the thing. Smart 600 watt power supply for probably 50 bucks, taxes and shipping if you don't have Amazon Prime. Here's a semi-modular for 50 bucks, 650 watts. But no. This $40, a $40 power supply could have saved this computer from this fate. So, I mean, that power supply I have had for 10 or 11 years now. Still works just fine, and has not fried a computer. This power supply, this little thing, I think the wiring harness more than doubles the weight of the actual supply. I flung one of these into a set of power lines about 10 years ago. A little bit disappointed that it didn't actually make contact with the 14.4 kilovolt hot wire and cook it. But no, this cheap and cheerful little thing probably cost all of $10 to build, components and labor included, and it has totaled out a computer. So, yeah, unfortunately, that looks like it's the end of this video. We've got a dead motherboard, and I don't know if the CPU is good or not. I could probably put the RAM in something else and run MemTest 86 against it. But let's knock the dust off of it. See if we can get the camera to focus. Yeah, 4 gig DDR3 4 gigabytes of DDR3 1600. So I mean, it's not even particularly good RAM. It is RAM that you would install in and computer. So it's not even good RAM. Probably helps if I set the focus back to auto. Yeah. 4 gigs. At least that's what this label says. Yeah. Is that a 6? No, it's a 5. 512X8, so there's 4. Yeah, there's 8 512 meg memory chips on here. Yeah, DDR3 1600. So nothing to write home about. I've got a box of memory modules right up there. So yeah, this little $10 power supply that the original builder of this system didn't want to replace with something of any amount of quality whatsoever has now taken out this computer. So yeah, that's the end of the video. There's not much more I can do about here. All I've got here is a pile of parts. So next video will probably be taking this thing apart and making fun of it every which way we can. So yeah, it's not how I wanted this video to end, but it is unfortunately how this video is going to end. So anyways, this is TCG Productions. Peace out, guys. Peace out. Do not use terrible power supplies with your computers. Buy something that's actually made of quality, not crap. See you in the next one. Okay, this is a bit of an addendum, a bit of a postscript to the video. So no, the video is not over yet. So after I finished recording the previous segment of video, I recorded a video over why you should not use cheap power supplies in your computers. Did a little bit of a totally informal analysis on that power supply and everything. And then I had a look, and then I plugged the hard drive into the computer that you see behind me, which is currently erasing that hard drive. So all the data on that drive will be destroyed, and is currently being destroyed. From what I could gather from the contents of that hard drive, the system was built in early January 16th, 2015 is when the Windows install came to light. The original Windows 7 install. So the system was probably built that week of January, so it was built 11 years ago. 11 years ago as of probably about last week or something like that. And the system's already dead because, again, that power supply, that cheap, no-name, low-quality power supply took the system down. And speaking of power supply taking the system down, the system was wildly unstable in its last few weeks of operation, having recorded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 check disk events between September 28th and September 28th, 2024, and March 10th, 2025, according to the check disk logs that were stored in the system volume information folder. So this system was definitely getting pretty unstable in its last few months of operation. The system appears to have last booted in any variety on March 18th. On March 18th of 2025, that's the latest date I can find anywhere on the hard disk. So March 18th, 2025 was probably the last time that system booted until we got it to boot one last time earlier in the video. And that was the very last time that system will ever boot. So the system ended up getting upgraded to Windows 10 sometime around December of 2019 to January of 2020. So the system did end up taking a Windows 10 upgrade, and it had the it had the well-known Windows.bt folder stored on the hard disk, which means that the Windows upgrade came in via one of those free Windows upgrade offer things that was probably unscrupulously forced upon the previous owner of the computer. Speaking of the previous owner of the computer, I'm going to imagine that they were probably on the elderly side of things, and some of the documents on the computer indicated that they did unfortunately fall victim to a tech support scam. A tech support scam operating under the name of MTE Solutions with an Irving, Texas address. This and a pile of other scams. See, this happened in 2016. This and a pile of other scams ended up getting shut down via at least a temporary injunction by Texas Attorney General Greg Paxton. Not Greg Paxton. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. In March 2019 is whenever those scams were shut down via a temporary injunction. And so the hard drive itself was a typical Seagate hard drive. Surprisingly, did not have any bad sectors recorded, but it had the hallmarks of classic lazy Seagate drive electronics, with a ton of read errors, ton of seek errors. The drive has logged about 27,700 power on hours. 27,658 power on hours is what I saw, and is what you're seeing there in the screenshot, which is probably posted up on the screen right now. It's been turned on and off 10,127 times. So it looks like this was a system that was powered up when it was needed, used, and then shut down. But no bad sectors. Looks like it never got particularly hot. And yeah. So seems that this system lived a mostly quiet life other than the power supply. There were highly sensitive personal documents on there, all of which I did not have, all of which are being destroyed as we speak. So behind me you can see D-band doing its thing, wiping the drive. So yeah, Windows install. System was built on or around January 16th of 2015. And the last time it did anything prior to today was March 18th of 2025. I got the Windows 10 upgrade on or around December of 2019. And yeah. And so one of the items left behind in the folder that was left behind by the tech support scammers operating under the name of MTE Solutions was a URL shortcut to a Facebook group. I will probably check that and see if the group still exists. My guess would be that the group no longer exists. So, but yeah, that is well and truly everything I've got to say about this system. I've already scrapped it out. I've already parted it out. There wasn't much left that was any good. Not even the case fan was any good, because it was turning very slowly and it seemed very stiff. So I pretty much got a computer case, an optical drive, a computer case, an optical drive, a single stick of RAM, and a small pile of screws out of it, and that was it. And a processor. Speaking of the processor, let's have a look at it. It's an AMD A4-6300 series processor. And no, I have not cleaned the thermal paste off of it. There was, for all intents and purposes, no thermal paste left underneath the processor. There was no thermal paste on the heatsink of the processor. Oh, and I got a tiny little heatsink out of it. So all those parts, and I got those few out of it. This processor bears an AMD copyright of 2011. So this was an already cheap, slow processor that was several years old at the time this system was built. and I cannot imagine that it has aged very well in this day and age. So again, AMD A4-6300 series CPU. I have probably called it an Athlon at least once, but it's one of these little AMD APU things. These APUs were not great to begin with, and they have aged absolutely horribly as time has gone on. So this was already a cheap and nasty little system when it began life, and it certainly didn't get any better as time went on. So anyways, that is well and truly everything I have to say about this system. So anyways, this is TCG Productions. Peace out, guys. Peace out. And I will see y'all in the next one.